Welcome to Whiskey One, the channel for the novice, the curious, and the connoisseur. I'm Whiskey One, and today we're going to be reviewing the Laphroaig 2022 Cairdeas. But before we get into all that, there's two questions we hope to answer for all you. Should Laphroaig be your first bottle of whiskey? And number two, is this going to be your favorite Cairdeas? So stick around. Alright folks, so thank you for joining the Whiskey One fam and checking us out. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing. Hit that like button, of course, if you enjoy what you watch, and if you have any whiskeys that you want us to talk about next time, drop a comment below. Also, if you are not new to the channel, thanks again for stopping by and continuing to show us some love. And on that note, I have a few shout outs. Tom Figueroa, Silviano Trujillo Jr., Brian Collins, and Mike Pierce. From time to time, we're going to do some shout outs just to show love back to all of you who continue to show us love, support, regularly give us feedback. We've been kicking around the idea of perhaps doing a live stream and having different guests from time to time, and would like to know what you guys think of us doing a live stream. Also, should we start incorporating cigar pairings? I know from time to time there are some great whiskeys that we talk about, we share with all of you, and it just might be nice to have a cigar or two that would go good with it, I think. But before we go into all that, we want to know what your thoughts are. So again, comment below. So without further ado, let's get right into this. This is a Islay Single Malt Scotch. For those of you that may not know too much about Scotch, just know that if you do pick up a bottle of Scotch, Scotch is heavily known for its regional influence. So whiskey that you will find to be a little bit more medicinal, smokier, a little bit more intense in flavor will tend to come from the island of Islay, and that's where this is from. And I won't get into all the details of all the different regions in Scotland, but what I can tell you is other regions in Scotland do have peat smoke that they incorporate in making their whiskey, while others do not, or they use a very small amount. So I'm just going to go ahead and peel off this neck, and let's do a fresh cork pop, shall we? Ah, that sounds beautiful. Smells beautiful too. All right, let's do a little pour here. This is a cask strength Islay Single Malt Scotch. It is peaty, it is smoky, so if you're not into smoky whiskey, this will likely not be your jam. And this is bottled at 52.2% alcohol. It is bottled at cask strength. There is not an age statement, so we don't know how long the whiskey took to age before it was bottled, but one thing to also note before we go into the whiskey itself is color. Most of the time, Islay single malt scotches are light in color. And you might be asking yourself, why is it that something that's probably been aged for a long time is so light on the color? And we'll do a close-up here. It's yellow, almost straw in color. And, you know, as far as the viscosity, the legs that show up on the glass, right now it does have a nice moderate amount of oil, a little bit of that viscosity, just kind of letting you know the overall richness on the palate that you might get from a whiskey. And again, it's just a really light color, and that's mostly to blame because of the environment. Now this in particular is a Scotch that was aged in ex-Maker's Mark barrels. So if you know anything about whiskey in general or have had a bourbon, you've likely had a Maker's Mark. And that's what they use to make this Cairdeas. Also, Laphroaig. Let's briefly talk about Laphroaig. This is a distillery that's been around the block for many, many a year, at least over 200 years. They started up in 1815, and they've been around the block and then some. They're one of the most heavily peated scotches that you'll come across, and for the most part, this is why I love them. Now, I'm going to get into that nose and talk to you guys about what my thoughts are on whether this or a Laphroaig should be your first bottle. So this Cairdeas is their Warehouse 1 release. And they had a bold statement to deliver to all of us. Let's put out a whiskey that was really, really peat forward. And on the nose, it is just that. This is a peat bomb. Make no mistake about it. They're not holding anything back. This is not subtle, not light. This is heavily peated. But that's not all you get. And that's what I really like about Laphroaig. I get a good amount of citrus. And I'm talking, like if you took a lemon, slice it in half, and let it sit on a grill, this is what it would smell like. So more than just peat smoke, a good amount of fruitiness that really starts to show up as you go back to this and you let it open up. Mind you, this is a fresh cork pop, so it hasn't had very much time to oxidize or open up or air out. But going back to it, I also get a good amount of earth, fresh cut leaves that have fallen, and I get leather too. A good amount of leather, like a fresh, like a leather bound book, if you will. One thing I also get is a little bit of that dusty or nuttiness and a little bit of dark chocolate. Interestingly, it's creamy too. As this is starting to open up, it's not just a one-trick pony. Before I get into the taste, I just want to ask you guys, what do you think should be your first whiskey if you've never tried whiskey before or you're not really sure if you're ready to dive into that journey? I'm asking you that question because I'd love to hear your feedback, but I will tell you this. Should Laphroaig be your first bottle? I don't know. I'll just say this. Laphroaig was my first bottle and the one that really kicked off my whiskey journey. My wife got me a bottle of Laphroaig 10 for our 8-year anniversary. And ever since then, I've been hooked. But I don't quite know if Laphroaig should be your first bottle. And here's why. There's many a person that has talked to me and said, hey, Laphroaig is not for me. It's just too peaty. It's too medicinal. I don't like the taste or the smell. It smells like rubber, like a fresh tire factory. There's certain things about Laphroaig that really turn me off. And interestingly, those things actually turn me on to whiskey. So I'm curious if whether you guys like that heavy, intense peat smoke, some of those things that you get out of Laphroaig that you get from no other whiskey. I'd love to hear what you have to say. So now let's get into that taste. Oh boy, all the reasons I fell in love with Laphroaig. You get a good amount of sea spray, minerality, citrus fruit, and not just that lemon peel that I was talking about earlier, right? I'm getting a little apricot, a little pineapple. This feels like a citrus bomb and not just a peat bomb. But oh boy, that peat is hanging on the palate. It's actually warming the throat. It's giving me the Islay hug. And this is a good, rich, and viscous whiskey. This is one of those whiskeys that is just got a very, very long finish. And if you're not really sure what I mean by a finish, it's basically how does it feel when you drink whiskey and you've already swallowed it and whether or not those flavors continue to hang out and linger and stay with you, and whether you can continue to get new things from it. That's what we call a finish. So I'm going to take another sip and explore it just a little more. Okay. Now, what does Cairdeas mean? That was one of the first things that I asked myself when I came across my first bottle of Cairdeas. Now, Cairdeas is Gaelic for friendship, and they specifically released these bottles for the friends of Laphroaig, those that are true fans of Laphroaig. And these come out annually, and every bottle is typically something new, something fresh to offer their friends at Laphroaig. This one in particular is referenced as Warehouse 1. Now, Warehouse 1 is one of their rick houses that they have right on the shore of Islay. And it gets a good amount of exposure to like the storms, the sea spray, of course, which is probably why it gets so much minerality, right? This is a maritime whiskey. Make no mistake about it. This would be perfectly paired with a bunch of olives. If you had a charcuterie, oh my God, you're gonna fall in love with this because it's just gonna make all of these flavors really pop. So I'm gonna take one more sip and then reveal if there's anything else that I'm getting from this great bottle. Oh man, I'll tell you, this would go fantastic with a steak. I'm talking fresh off the grill. There's a good amount of black pepper and smokiness, of course, that comes from this. More of that leather comes around. You start to feel like, all right, this is not just a peated whiskey. This is a peated whiskey to the nth degree. Now, is this the best Cairdeas? In my opinion, I gotta say it's not the best Cairdeas as far as complexity. I was hoping that I got a little something more than just the peat bomb. But at the same time, I'm a peathead. I like the peat. I like aggressive peat. And is that the type of bottle that you want, an aggressive peat? If so, this is the bottle that's for you. And this might end up being your favorite Cairdeas, if that's the case. But we had a previous release last year that was a Pedro Jimenez cask. Beautiful. I mean, there was something so sultry, complex, delicious. I couldn't get enough of it. And then before that, you know, they've had other releases that were also like wine finished Cairdeas. Superb. Now, I'm a big fan of Laphroaig. Again, one of the reasons I got into whiskey was my introduction to whiskey through Laphroaig. So I think that this could be your favorite. I will just say it's not my favorite. And that's only because of the lack of overall complexity. Now, there's one thing I'm going to mention. There's some folks that are turned off by cilantro. And one of the things that I've learned is friends of mine that do not like cilantro also do not like peat. So if that's kind of where you're at, you might be turned off by this bottle and it may not be something that you're into. Overall retail for this is also about $95 to $100. And that's about the price point that they've been at year after year. Obviously now with inflation, $100 is about what you can expect to pay for this. Now, do I think it's worth it? Again, I'm such a peat head and I'm such a big fan of Laphroaig that yes, I will say that it's definitely worth it. But I think that if you're looking for something that hits all kinds of different angles and takes you for all these rides in different ways, this may not be something that you want to grab, and I'll just leave it at that. This is the last video that we're going to have for November, and this is our latest shirt, and we're going to be doing a shirt giveaway at the end of the month. So if you're interested in getting a shirt for free, definitely drop a comment below or send us an email. Let us know your thoughts on how we're doing and if there's anything we could do as far as a review, and you'll be entered for the random giveaway. Now, before we let you go, we want to show love back and say we appreciate all of you. And here at Whiskey One, it's about the one you enjoy. Cheers.
Shut up and sit down.